Welcome. So I'm Erin McGuire, and I am the Director of Responsible Innovations. I'm really excited to have you all here today to talk about the state of investments in fruit and vegetables, a global report, sowing a colorful revolution in food systems. This is part of a five-part series where we talk about the five big results from this report. Some of you have been joining for multiple sessions, and so we've structured the webinar series so that we talk about the findings first. We have really specific focus topics. Today, it's on strengthening seed systems and research infrastructure. And we have a wonderful set of panelists to go through that topic with you all. But we will essentially dive right into the results around seed systems and research infrastructure. And then after that, we will spend some time doing a deeper dive into the overall study. But because some of you have been here for other webinars, we want to make sure that that's at the end. So you're welcome to jump off afterward after you've heard from our amazing panel today. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We will go through this overall study quickly and then pivot to our Archie Jarman will present specific results on seed systems and research infrastructure. And then Dr. Naalamle Amissah will moderate our panel. And then we will have Q&A. And then afterward, I will go through the overall study and a little bit more about responsible innovations. We are going to be recording this webinar, so please let us know in the chat if that for some reason is an issue for you. And feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, say hello. I see a lot of friendly colleagues and some new people, so really happy to have you all here today. Okay. So this study has been a passion project of the Horticulture Innovation Lab, which was formerly a part of the Feed the Future Innovation Labs for about 3 years. And we worked in combination in partnership with World Veg and IFPRI, University of Bonn, and many partners from West and East Africa, South Asia, and Central America. Including those on the call today, who I will have the opportunity to introduce in a moment. And we really wanted to understand what is the landscape of investments in fruits and vegetables. If 93% of our food-based dietary guidelines, which is showcased here, say that our plate should be fruits and vegetables, is there money going in to back that up and make sure that that's an outcome of our food system? And so here you can see that some examples of these food-based dietary guidelines from Japan, the United States, and Ghana, I believe. So really, this is a pervasive message. And so it's incredibly important that we be thinking about what are outcomes of the food systems that we want. And clearly, it's a healthy plate of fruits and vegetables. Yet we do not see enough production or consumption of fruits and vegetables globally. So world production is around 10 grams less than what it would take for every single person on the planet to have enough fruits and vegetables. And I want to add that we are 10 grams short if you include roughage. So this isn't even the actual edible part of the fruit and vegetable plant. So we're actually quite short of what everyone needs in order to have fruits and vegetables. And this is a significant equity issue because we know that fruits and vegetables right now are expensive relatively, and they're going to high-income people and high-income countries. So it's incredibly important that we start to think about how to make these crops more accessible, affordable, and desirable. And so understanding what the investment landscape looks like is an important first step. And there has never been any study to comprehensively look at what the investments are globally in fruits and vegetables. There's also very little data that is able to be aggregated to understand fruit and vegetable consumption and production. So we really aimed through this study and our partners, which spanned 10 different countries and 200 experts, to understand in the private sector, NGOs, government, where are the investments happening and what are the impact of investments if they're not happening. And so that brings us to the culmination, like I said, of this 3-year study, The State of Investments in Fruits and Vegetables, a global report, Sowing a Colorful Revolution in Food Systems. And we really look at it as we need deep investment in fruits and vegetables, seed sector, and research in order to have the outcomes we want to see in the food system. So the objectives of this study were to understand the landscape of global horticulture R&D, identify the challenges facing horticulture investment and opportunity areas for investment along fruit and vegetable chains, and build local partnerships, strengthen research implementation, and disseminate findings for sustainable impact. So through this research, we were really able to connect hundreds of experts that in turn, we are continuing to engage through these types of webinars and through actual policy advocacy to get more funding for these types of crops. So I will talk a little bit more about our methods, which were quite extensive and unique, and the data sources that we had in order to generate these results. But at the end of the day, we found that only about 10% of investment is going to fruits and vegetables, particularly in local consumer value chains. There's other investment going, but to larger export chains. However, we also talked about in our data collection methods, we aim to understand buckets of quick win investments and priority areas for investment. And so these were the investment areas that are merged to address post-harvest losses and build value chains, enhance extension through capacity building and digital innovation, strengthen seed systems and research infrastructure, elevate nutrition and consumer demand for fruits and vegetables, and enable market access for women through policy instruments. So next week, we'll tackle elevating nutrition and consumer demand, but this week, we're focusing on strengthening seed systems and research infrastructure. And so, again, we're happy to talk a little bit more about each of these buckets that emerged as high priority areas for investment right now for big gains. And hopefully one of my colleagues can put in the overall report in the chat, because of course there's a deep dive into all these topics, including the 9 countries that we deeply engaged with. And with that, I'm going to turn over the mic to my colleague, Archie Jarman, who's also with Responsible Innovations and was a huge part of making this study happen, to talk about very specific findings within seed systems and research infrastructure. And then we'll turn to our panel, who I'm excited to introduce. So Archie, please go ahead.
Thank you, Erin. Yes, as Erin mentioned, this is just going to be a high-level presentation of some of the results regarding seed sector infrastructure and research investment in that area. For more details, please, the report, I put the link in the chat. There is not only the global report, but also country-level reports that have greater level of detail. Next slide, please. So as one of the 5 priority areas, the seed systems and research infrastructure presented itself as a high-level priority area in terms of how lack of investment is impeding productivity in the sector. 27% of experts cited limited access to improved crop varieties specifically as a key barrier, and it hampers productivity and increases risk, especially for smallholder farmers. 45% of the experts recommended prioritization of improved varieties for investment in some of the specific countries where this was More prominently highlighted included Kenya, Ghana, Nepal, Tanzania, Guatemala, Honduras, and Benin. So that right there is 7 of the 9 countries where that emerged as a very important kind of component of the research prioritization. And then within Nepal specifically, there's noted that outdated seed systems are a major constraint in the horticulture sector. And it also, this outdated system is a signal of a lack of investment in capacity building and innovation that is happening within the horticulture sector in Nepal. Next slide, please. So throughout the report and the study, this priority area of seed systems and research infrastructure uh, did highlight some areas of opportunity for investment that would make kind of dramatic changes in the horticulture sector and have huge improvements if those investments are made. One area for opportunities for investment is to expand breeding programs and propagation infrastructure, and this was prioritized specifically in Ghana, Kenya, and Nepal, along with stronger researcher to farmer linkages, especially for prioritizing indigenous crops and elevating indigenous crops into the horticulture sector. The second area for opportunity is to strengthen public-private research partnerships. This is to build trust and align objectives, which will accelerate development and adoption of improved varietals. Then the third opportunity for investment included focus on diverse and resilient varieties. These are not only varietals that may be resilient in terms of climate change, but also what emerged was suitable varieties in terms of low resource post-harvest environments, so they may have improved shelf life along with better ability to retain nutrition during storage. And then the last area for opportunity is to invest in better data systems. So this is to track phenotypic and post-harvest traits to guide breeding priorities. Next slide, please. Within the report, we decided to think about different indicators, return on investment indicators that could be used in order to measure whether these investments in these priority areas are having the intended effect. And so we have this ROI indicator table for each of the 5 priority areas in the report. This is the one that was developed specifically for seed systems and research infrastructure. And you can see that we developed 7 ROI indicators, the first one being varietal adoption rate, looking at the percentage of farmers adopting newly released or improved fruit and vegetable varieties. Certified seed use is the percent of seed sales or planting material verified through formal certification or quality assurance systems. The third being time to varietal release, average number of years from varietal development till market release, showing a robust pipeline or a well-resourced pipeline. Seed access and availability is the percent of farming households with access to quality fruit and vegetable seed. Biodiversity and resilience is the number of indigenous or climate resilient varieties developed or conserved through breeding programs and adopted by farmers. The 6th being nutrition and quality trait, specifically looking at the number of varieties that have improved nutritional content, improved shelf life, or other post-harvest advantages. And the last one being public-private partnerships. So looking at the number and scale of former research and development partnerships for horticulture seed innovation, including the amount of funding being mobilized in order to address these constraints in this sector. And that is my last slide, I believe. And I'll turn it back over to Erin to introduce our esteemed panel.
Thanks a lot, Archie. Like we said, there's a lot more in the report. We're hoping to pique your interest and get you to take a deeper dive. I also want to add that a significant aim of this study was to make data readily available through verified methodology to make the case to policymakers on why we need more funding in fruits and vegetables. And so the report is really baked with stats and points like these that you can make to funders, to ministries of ag, et cetera, to ensure that you are making a solid case for fruits and vegetables. And we've been able to develop a packet as well, so that researchers can advocate for fruits and vegetables using data developed during this study. So thank you so much, Archie, and please get in touch if you have any questions about these data. And now I'd like to pass it along to our panel, who are experts working in this space, have been mentors of mine, wonderful colleagues, really pushing the field in seed sector and research, institutional development. So first, I will introduce Dr. Naalamle Amissah. She is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana and holds a degree in agriculture from the University of Science and Technology in Kumasi, a Master's of Science degree and Ph.D. in horticulture from Cornell University. And her research interests are in the selection, evaluation, and propagation of economically important plants that are either difficult to propagate or at risk of extinction, such as medicinal plants and vegetable species that fall within these categories, and the development of improved technologies to ensure successful establishment. And has done wonderful work leading the Horticulture Innovation Lab Regional Hub in West Africa, and I know continues that work with many of her colleagues. And Dr. Amissah will be leading the panel today. And she will be talking with Dr. Mary Ann Sayoc, who is the Partnerships and Alliances Lead of East West Seed International. She has over 24 years of professional experience in the seed industry and was the former general manager of East West Seeds in the Philippines, which is a Dutch company that focuses on variety development, production, and distribution of tropical vegetable seeds with the aim of improving the livelihood of smallholder farmers. And Dr. Matthew A. Nan is a plant breeder and seed systems expert who I know is really involved in this study from Benin. And he brings over 10 years of dedicated work to improve food security across Africa. He is currently a vegetable breeder with the World Vegetable Center in Benin, as I mentioned, and he earned his Ph.D. in plant breeding with the West Africa Center of Crop Development at the University of Ghana. And his research centers on the genetic improvement of vegetables, particularly okra, to develop nutritious, market-preferred, and climate-resilient cultivars. And finally, Dr. Alan Van Dynes, who is from the University of California, Davis, which is where this study originated. He is the director of the Seed Biotechnology Center and associate director of the Plant Breeding Center at the University of California, Davis. He has a PhD in plant breeding from University of Guelph, Canada, as a part of SBC's mission to serve as a liaison between public institution and seed industry. Alan is responsible for developing, coordinating, and conducting research and generating and disseminating scientific and informational content for the Seed Biotech Center and Plant Breeding Center. So really lucky to have this group of people together. Alan, I know, also has been involved in developing a overall plan for African orphan crops, so to speak. There's lots of names for what we refer to these types of crops. So just really excited to hear from the whole panel. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat. And after the panel is over, I will help moderate the questions to our panelists. And with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Amissah.
Thank you very much, Erin. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of us, and welcome to our webinar on strengthening the seed systems and research infrastructure. Like Erin mentioned, my name is Naalamle Amissah, and I'll be moderating this session. So our discussion today is rooted in the findings of the Global Report on the State of Investments in Fruits and Vegetables. This report, if you have read, highlights the undeniable importance of fruits and vegetables for human health, for social and economic benefits and planetary resilience. A core theme emerging from the report and our focus today is the critical role of robust seed systems and research infrastructure in transforming food systems and closing the fruit and vegetable gap. Today, we have a distinguished panel of experts who have been introduced, who will share their insights on this vital area. So let's dive into our first question. So looking at the report and drawing from the comprehensive findings of this report, and to our panelists, which two insights or takeaways do you believe are the most impactful for shaping future direction or driving meaningful change in the fruit and vegetable sector? So I'll ask that you please elaborate briefly on why these particular insights stand out for you. So I'll start with Alan. So
Well, thank you very much for having me and putting the system in. Like Aaron said, I've been on the scientific director for the African Orphan Crops Consortium. We've been thinking about this a lot, and seed systems rises to the top as really a limiting step in really getting improved varieties and vegetables in on people's tables. And so I think one of the most important things to move forward will really be would be private-public partnerships and investment in both of those in infrastructure to make those happen. I was reading a number of other studies and things where I'm saying, there was one recent study actually they hit everything I think the nail on the head, and they really emulated and say what's happened in Asia, and I'll let Marianne speak because her company really led what's happened in Asia, and I think we can take a model from that. But one of the studies was saying the national programs are not producing, important varieties, and that's just absolutely wrong. And so the investment in national programs with partnerships in business, I think, is critical. The two, as we know, around the world are part of one industry. They're not, them and us, which sometimes is seen that way. And national programs are excellent at research, on bringing in new traits, on improving varieties, and of course, seed industry is very, very good at commercializing those and developing pipelines and systems that that get those out to the farmers. And so the second thing I would highlight is just that, is getting it to the farmers would be extension. They said, there is a need for that. There absolutely is a need for extension at the local level, where there's trust, and for people to understand, that improved varieties are important, and sometimes saving seed is not a great idea. What people don't realize is that, if you're still growing the same variety from the same seed as your great-great-grandfather, you're actually getting less yield than your great-grandfather, both due to genetics and purity of your seed. And there's, the improved varieties probably combine when, the goal is obviously to combine those best genetics that your great-grandfather selected that landrace for in the first place, but adding, things that are important as well, like yield, like disease resistance and things like that. And so it's critical for farmers to understand the value of seed and the importance of honestly buying seed. And the advantage of that. And farmers are very smart. I think the show and tell works very, very well with farmers. If they see they're getting 20, 30% increase in yield, 10% increase in yield, they're buying it next year. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alan. One of the things that what you mentioned that resonated well with me is, farmers are smart, like you said. If they find increasing yields, they will go for the seed, and it definitely it's something that we should be looking into. So, Marianne, what are your two most impactful takeaways from the study?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Naalamle. And thank you also, Erin, and the rest of the team for having me here. It's funny because I have exactly the same the answer as Dr. Allen. For me, the seed system is also on the top of my list. Because I think a well-functioning seed system provide farmers with consistent access to quality seeds. And we all know that seed is the most critical input in crop production, and farmers rely heavily on the quality of seeds that would give them a good harvest and a fair return on their investment. And farmers really look for certain traits, in the seed that they would like to plant. And of course, it always starts with increased yields, better fruit quality, earlier harvesting time, also disease resistance, and better transportability. And for the vegetable consumers, I think traits like longer shelf life, taste, color, shape are also very important. So considering these varying needs, it is important for plant breeders to link closely with farmers and consumers when setting their breeding goals and variety development objectives, because I believe that plant breeding should be market-driven, market-oriented. And Dr. Allen, you mentioned that exactly that's how East West Seed, started. When we started, everything was farm safe seeds and a lot of imported seeds, but we actually started doing research on local vegetables, variety development on local vegetables, and that's all. And right now, and I think the adoption rate of the farmers were very good. So, which brings me actually to the second result that I would highlight, which is extension. In order to maximize the genetic potential of improved varieties, farmers have to apply better agronomic practices. Many smallholder farmers lack the technical farming expertise to fully realize the advantages of high-quality seeds. So building their capacity through hands-on training, field demonstrations, learning farms, crop guides will enable them to realize the benefits of improved varieties. And scaling up these extension activities will help expand the horizon for existing and potential vegetable farmers. So I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marianne. So again, highlighting the importance of improved seed varieties, and we definitely can't do without the extension services to ensure that the farmers really understand how to plant these seeds and what exactly goes into it to obtain the yields that we are looking for. Okay, thank you so much. So Matthew, what are your two top takeaway messages? Most impactful takeaway messages. Yeah.
Thanks, Naalamle. It's never easy to speak last, and I would say my 2 points have been taken, but I definitely have other points. Thanks, Alan and Mary. And data system, investment in data system for me is very critical. I've been talking about it and raising it wherever I can, and I'm happy this was echoed through this report and through other experts across the countries where this study was conducted. By data system, we need that to even prioritize investment in these vegetables. We cannot, of course, with the resources available, invest in all of them at the same level or at the same time. And one example of this lack of what lack of data can create is currently I'm focusing more on okra, and when you go to FAO stats, There is no okra record for Ethiopia, for instance, but from my experience, from my field visits, a lot of okra is being grown, especially in western part of Ethiopia. No record of okra in Togo, but Togo being within Ghana and Benin, there is no way okra is not being grown there, and there are reports, and I've seen them in the field, which means, for instance, for someone who wants to invest in okra seed system or seed sector, either private company or public investment, he's not likely going to select those two countries because he will definitely rely on data that is available online, which will likely mislead his investments. And yeah, that's one point where the data system need to be strengthened, starting from the national level to ensure that we have access to reliable data. And I'm sure while drafting this report, you have really encountered this issue in having access to reliable data sources. And yeah, that's very important to make informed decisions. The second aspect regarding data, Mary and Alan touched briefly on this, is to guide prioritization in the breeding system. So we have prioritization for the crop, but within the breeding system, we need market information, market intelligence to guide, to ensure that we breeders align with what the market want, consumer, and everybody along the value chain. And yeah, this also is very critical. I know from the CG and other centers like us, some investment have been made to really streamline the way we collect market information, and we are actually learning most of this from the private sector, which is very strong in this, and that's where public-private partnerships is critical to really tap into the way the private sector work to align their products to the market and make a bigger impact. So these are on the data system. The second aspect is on investment in breeding infrastructures. I'm sure within the 10% investment you have when it's come to real allocation to breeding infrastructure, maybe 0.5% or even less. And some of the project will prefer, which is normal, every donor wants quick impact, number of people reach, but we don't touch the real cause that will bring the transformation. So breeding infrastructure in many of our research institutions, especially the National Agricultural Research Institutes, is lacking. The people are willing to work, but yeah, it's just not convenient to really bring about the science that is needed to create or engender the transformation that we need in the system. So more investment in this is very important, and everything as Alan said and Mary, I definitely concur, and is echo with what we are already experiencing in the field. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much, Matthew. You raised some very important points as well. Investment in the data system and infrastructure in national breeding programs, and then also the need for breeders to actually work hand in hand with the key stakeholders, the farmers, the consumers. So making sure that the seeds that are coming out, or improved seeds that are coming out, are of benefit to the farmers as well. Okay. So moving on, one of the 5 priority investment areas identified in the report is, like we saw, strengthening the seed systems and research infrastructure. Now, very important for improving fruit and vegetable productivity, resilience, and dietary diversity. I'd like for each of you to share 2 to 3 examples of seed system partnerships or capacity building initiatives that your countries or your organizations are actively promoting, and why you believe these specific investments are smart. Okay, so I'll start with Marianne.
Yeah, thank you again, Dr. Naalamle. Eastern Seed is a firm advocate of seed systems partnerships. In fact, we have a number of public-private collaborations in R&D in the Philippines and also internationally. So one example is the technology transfer agreement between East-West Seed Philippines and the University of the Philippines at Los Baños. So UPLB is the technology developer which grants East to a seed non-exclusive license for the commercial production, marketing, and distribution of a variety of papaya, a yellow-fleshed papaya we call Sinta. So it was developed by the university, but it couldn't reach, the farmers because, the university has no funds to invest in marketing, in promotion, and very little funds for production. So they actually came to East Seed. So we had this partnership already for more than 20 years. And the East Seed pays a royalty fee to UPLB based on the gross sales remitted annually. So in this sense, this variety, which is nutritious and which gives farmer a good income, is made available not only in the Philippines, but also in other countries in the world. It is why did we invest in this partnership? Because first of all, if we would have done it ourselves, I think it would take a long time, and then it would also be more costly. And also, we would like to support the University of the Philippines because, public research institutes have always limited funds. So I think it's a mutual benefit, and through this partnership, it can accelerate innovation, technology, dissemination, and impact. Also, in our experience, if the private sector partners with public research institutes, we also attract external funding. So there are more donors are willing to fund the research if there is really a public-private partnership. Another example which I would like to share is on germplasm conservation and pre-breeding. So Seed has partnerships with a number of institutions like UC Davis. So we provide support to the Charles M. Rick Tomato Genetics Research Center Fund. So we provide support to that. Also to the Center for Genetic Resources at Wageningen University. We have an agreement on the regeneration and characterization of certain vegetables. For now, we have received a number of eggplant accessions, which we regenerate for and characterize for the CGM. Of course, we have a long-standing partnership with the World Vegetable Center through the APSA World Veg Research Consortium. Also, we have also a partnership with the Crop Trust on the eggplant pre-breeding materials for adaptation to climate change. So we have participated in that project together with the Polytechnic University of Valencia. And locally, we have an agreement with the National Plant Genetic Resources Laboratory, where we also characterize and regenerate certain selected vegetable germplasm. Because, as I mentioned, the university has very limited funds for doing such. So we also try to help them in this sense. And even in Indonesia, we helped them set up the National Vegetable Gene Bank at the University of Gadjah Mada in Yogyakarta. Of course, why did we enter into this? Because we believe that we have the shared goals, for conservation and preservation of genetic diversity. So investing in this kind of collaboration will not only shorten the breeding cycle, the breeding process, but will help understand genetic diversity and discover novel traits. And it will provide the company access to data and germplasm. So formal agreements, in fact, were executed with these different organizations, taking into account IP rights, germplasm access, and benefit sharing regulations. Now, I'd like to share the third example. This time, it's a capacity building partnership with the Department of Agriculture, Philippine Rice Research Institute. So, East West Seed and Phil Rice implemented a crop diversification project to increase the productivity and net income of rice farmers. Experience really taught us now that there is more income. Farmers have more income when planting vegetables than when planting rice. Given the small area, they can realize more income by with 2,500 square meters of, for example, bitter gourd, as against 1 hectare of rice. No. So we conducted training through farmer field schools. We set up techno demos showcasing the rice veggie technology. We organized field days for farmers and technicians. We also conducted 3-day trainings for the local government extension workers. We also reach out to households by introducing to them practical ways of growing vegetables in their home garden. So for the farmers, we actually link them directly with reputable traders and institutional buyers. So building on this, on the success of this pilot project, Phil Rice and East West replicated this project in other towns and villages. So I think this type of partnership would facilitate, we have shared goals, and also it promotes transparency and accountability and build trust. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Marianne. I mean, it highlights the importance of private-public partnerships for scaling up. And it's clear that the university on its own wouldn't have achieved what it is that it achieved in partnership with East West Seed. So these are great examples. So, Alan.
I'm very impressed with my co-panelists. We always agree on. It seems like we're agreeing on a lot of things. I don't know if that's good or bad or complimentary, but thank you, Marianne. I think those are fantastic examples. I wanted to focus on the F in the F and V for fruit and vegetables. We talk about seeds, which pertain mainly to vegetables. Marianne mentioned papaya as seed, but what people are forgetting is the hard stuff or the clonal crops, which fruits, many times are propagated this way, like fruit trees. And I do quite a work with the World Agroforestry Center, so C4 in Nairobi, which has stations across Africa. And for the last about 7-8 years, they've had a nice program where they're really looking at improving clones for key tree crops, food tree crops, and breeding tree fruit crops. Everybody's like, oh man, I'm not going to invest in that. I don't even have, I was once offered a tree crop breeding position. I was like, oh, I'm just not that visionary. My career is not that short. Yeah, I'm too late in my career for this one. But what they're doing is they're evaluating clones in garden nurseries. They're collecting germplasm, from all over the continent, and they're putting them in a common nursery in nurseries in different environments, and they're picking the best clones and then they're propagating those. And they developed a program where they're partnering with nurseries to get them out there, to the farmers locally. And, so they're not breeding, they're selecting. This is kind of the first step, taking advantage of what's there now. And but they're also genotyping and intercrossing, those selections. They are beginning to breed them, But in the meantime, they're getting out these improved clones as opposed to just picking fruit from the tree that happened to be growing in your backyard. And I think that's going to have some significant impact on, and I think it's quite ingenious, to be honest, to say we don't have to wait, 25 years for that improved variety to come out, and another 5 years for it to fruit, for a farmer to, we're skipping a generation essentially by doing so. So I think that's a really critical thing to invest in, is people completely forget about clonal crops because they're difficult, and they take time. And there's so much work now. I'm not, I do quite a bit of work in biotechnology as well. I don't think it's a panacea in any way. But there's some really game changer type traits you can do, and this is very important in clonal crops. One of the game changer traits is we can make clonal crops flower by changing, one or two genes in it. So that's usually the limiting step. We have to wait. A shea tree takes, sometimes 25 years, for a generation, and it takes 10 years to flower, and once it gets flowering. So you don't want to be breeding that, but you can switch a single gene, uses CRISPR, for example, which is a knockout, not a, not an adding a new gene. And all of a sudden you have a breeding program. And so I think it's critical to invest in other technologies, think out of the box, and don't forget the F and V that you have in your slideshow. Everybody focuses on vegetable seeds, annual vegetable seeds, because they're simple. So that's the one thing, and I totally agree. I had down, some of the good stuff that Crop Trust is doing, that Marianne mentioned. So Crop Trust has been developed initially to, collect all the wild progenitors and germplasm and put them in a gene bank, and maybe they're being used and 3/4 of them are not crossable. But now they have a program funded by the Norwegian government, I believe, with 4 countries. I know Benin is one of them. And I think Ethiopia, Benin, I forget the other one, but they're investing in breeding, in maintaining breeder seed. So practical, gene banks of land races and breeding germplasm, that is being used. So this is a little more advanced than these wild relatives. So let's use the current variation that we have and make sure that those seeds grow and are maintained, because especially national programs don't have the funds to keep their seeds alive. They want to say, oh, that was a great variety we saw 10 years ago, and find out, oh, it doesn't germinate anymore. And so I guess those are 2 examples that I had. It's really important to invest, I guess, in the beginning, but also not forget about the fruit part. And we can make some pretty big differences, even with clonal crops, perennial crops.
It's an important point that you raise. I mean, you're right. We spend a lot of, we focus more on the vegetables and compared to the fruits. And it's interesting to see how biotechnologies are being leveraged in terms of introduction of new varieties when it comes to your fruits as well. So that's very insightful. So Matthew, 2 to 3 examples of seed system partnerships or capacity building initiatives that your organizations are actively promoting, and why you believe these specific investments are smart.
Yeah, thanks, Naalamle. And maybe before getting to my examples, the project Alan is referring to is Boulder or Bold, depending on breeding opportunity for lesser developed or underutilized crops. And World Veg is part of that with Alliance Biodiversity and SEAT. And it's quite innovative, as we are using that to deploy the triadic comparison of technology trichots to infuse or disseminate, purify gene bank accessions to diversify cropping system. Okay, now coming to my examples, the first is the The consortia, we have Mary made mention of the APSA World Veg Consortium in Asia. We have a sister consortium in Africa. We are currently, as I'm talking, doing our annual workshop where this is the Africa Vegetable Breeding Consortium, which is a joint initiative between World Veg and the Africa Seed Trade Association, initiated in 2018. So yeah, we are still a kid, but a lot has been done across a lot has been done across over the last 7 years. So the model is very simple, and yeah. So we have private seed companies who become member of the AVBC, and as they become member, they pay small membership fees to keep the model sustainable. And then every year they have lead access to light materials, vegetable materials, and then they can either use it in the breeding program or use it directly as a release and use for in OP production. So depending on the size of the company, the use of the materials is different. And East West has been partner or a member of APSA and APSA World Veg Consortium in Asia and AVBC in Africa since the inception. So great partnership. And for us, we see AVBC and APSA as a technical arm for disseminating our materials. As an organization, it's very difficult for us to really get involved in dissemination, but the best entities who can do the scaling are those making profit out of it, and that's the private sector. So we understand that right at the beginning, and we really put a lot of effort in that. And I think if they are still with us, they are happy with the materials they are getting. And many hybrid are currently on the market, hybrid or OP, which are having World Veg as World Veg materials as parents or World Veg genetics at times is straight, not directly the full material that is exploited. So that's one example. For those companies, especially local seed companies or cooperative, who cannot join the AVBC, we also have other alternatives, especially through funded projects to support them. First, strengthen their capacity in seed production to ensure that everybody is safe, because not all farmers, not all the seed companies have the same market segment. So yeah, the segment that East West or Rice One is serving are probably different from those the local or seed cooperative at local or national level will serve. So we understand the plurality of the seed system and also strengthen the capacity of those seed companies or seed cooperative at the local level. Especially, we have a structural module, training program made up of 7 modules, which is deployed from seed regulation to seed marketing. So it's quite comprehensive, and yeah, through that we have seen a lot of change. And one thing is to strengthen their capacity, and the second is for them to have access to improved materials that are adapted to growing conditions and also to market preferences. So to be able to support in that, we partner with national institutions in Benin, in Arab, here in Mali, in Era, in Burkina Faso, and others, to release varieties in the system. So mainly OPs for those local seed companies to have access to improved materials that they can use, including the crop portfolio. And many of them are already marketing those OPs, and yeah, for the benefit of farmers, of course. And yeah, so those are the main 2 examples I will highlight in terms of partnering with the private sector and capacity strengthening and dissemination of improved varieties.
Yes. Thank you very much. So these definitely public-private research partnerships are key to fast-tracking varietal development and adoption, and I'm glad that we have quite a number of them going on. So let's wrap up with a forward-looking lens. For our final question, let's imagine it's 5 years from now. what would a successful seed system in your country or organization look like? So I'll start with you, Matthew. So we are moving into the future now.
Yeah, that's foresighting, and as breeder, I think that's something we are, I don't know, good at, but we need to be good at it, because when you start your breeding today, the market, before your variety get to the market, things may change. So yeah, in 5 years from now, what I would like, I envision the seed system, not only in Benin, but in countries where we work, or countries that share similar challenges right now, is really to have less, I mean, a seed system that is less dependent of external funding, like a seed system where private seed companies, whether international or local seed companies, are really active. As we often say, a vibrant seed system where all the stakeholders are active, and that the regulatory or policy environment is also conducive for them not only to invest, but to operate in a very efficient way. This is currently a bottleneck in many countries, which can, hold back investment in maybe in terms of IP right and other stuff. So getting the policy environment, institutional framework right, and to allow private seed companies to operate, of course, in partnership with a national extension agent or national research institution, which can maybe take upon them to some quite dirty work to prepare the market for the seed company. So that's important. And finally, I mean, at the end, we want to see increased use of high quality seeds of market preferred and adapted varieties. If that's the case now, I think the seminar or webinar will not be ahead. So that's really what I would like to see. And once I see that, I think I can retire peacefully. Thank you.
So Matthew, for you, it's vibrant seed system, regulatory environment that is conducive, and then increased yields. So in a nutshell, those are the three main things.
Of course, that goes hand in hand with investment. As I said, the opening investment is very critical, and yeah.
Okay, and increased investments. Okay. Okay, so Alan, for you, what would that be?
All right, thank you. You know, I think in the next 5 years, it'd be, you know, I guess it's not that long. I think it'd be fantastic really to really have a local seed sector developed where where farmers in the, you know, farmers are rural, but really it's called isolated farmers do have access to seed, but they also have the knowledge on how to use them. So that requires, you know, some infrastructure, you know, with businesses and national programs, and also with you know, a vibrant extension system supported by those, or also, you know, through government institutions. The other thing, the challenges, and I see some comments about, you know, being negative about hybrid seeds or maybe even buying seeds online. I think that's a misnomer. I mean, the reason hybrids are there and improved seeds are there is just that. I mean, they're the difference between a farmer having a crop at all sometimes by just having this one or two disease resistances. I'll give you an example. You know, an anthracnose is in beans in Zambia, and it's just devastating the crops. And there's a local breeder, University of Zambia, and you know, he's got resistance, and it's a yes, no. The farmers are begging him to give him the seed, and he doesn't have enough seed and the money to you know, to propagate them. So what does that, and hybrid seeds come into that? It gives you vigor, it gives you combination of traits. So I think it's a real misnomer saying, oh, you have to, you know, hybrid seeds are bad. The other thing about hybrid seeds, they're created by inbred lines, so you're not losing genetic diversity at all. People don't save hybrids in gene banks, they save their parents. So the parents are there to make multiple hybrids. So a combination of 10 parents can give you hundreds of hybrids, right? And usually you have one good female for example, and in many, males to give you many opportunities. So that brings the thing is, how's the cost? How can a smallholder farmer do that? The importance of having a microcredit system, whether that's public or privately driven, is really important. I just spent some time with the CEO of the CARE program worldwide. They reach 22 million children a year. The most successful program they have is just that. Little microcredit loans for farmers, for small businesses, and they're loans. They're not gifts. And so typical of, say, the Western world, and I know Ethiopia has a pretty good system in this space, or let's say they had until the cost of fertilizer went up too high, where farmers get an operating loan, so to buy inputs, and when they harvest, then they pay the loan. If it's an annual the same year, or if it's perennial, then there's other things going on. So credit to buy inputs is actually absolutely critical for the seeds, for the crops to grow. And so I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Marianne?
Yeah. For me, well, as Alan said, success in 5 years is actually too short. No, well, what I wanted to say is, I think for the Philippines, we are at least in my viewpoint on the right track of having local vegetables, readily, available to farmers. But the ideal situation, it's making them accessible to farmers, even in the remotest area of the country. We are not there yet. So the ideal situation is to really have an agro dealer or a source of seeds in every village, in every small village in the country, so that farmers would be able to buy the seeds at the time of planting. Second, I would like to see also a more conducive environment, an enabling environment. The regulatory, it's now more complicated to move seeds across countries, across, even locally. So I think we have to look at the regulatory framework, and also making it, if there are policies or regulations, they should be science-based, because very often, you know, the government or policymakers make regulations that are sometimes not really based on science. Third, I would like to see also more funds, especially from the government, allocated to fruits and vegetables. Right now, if we look at the budget of the government on agriculture, of fruits and vegetables would only be maybe 3%. Still, a lot is on rice. It's really rice-centric. It's a rice-centric budget. So, and also, vegetable farmers do not enjoy, support facilities like irrigation or some post-harvest, but only mainly for rice and corn. So it's still on the staples, no? Then my dream really is to see increased per capita consumption of vegetables. Philippines has the lowest per capita vegetable consumption in Southeast Asia, South Asia. Our per capita vegetable consumption is way below what the WHO recommends. So maybe it's due to cultural preference, but also the seasonality of vegetables. So if we could make vegetables more accessible year-round, no, so we could still influence, production systems like using protected cultivation, then I think we could encourage more households to to buy and also consume vegetables. The the National Nutrition Council promotes the planetary health diet, like what Erin showed, that it should be more fruits and vegetables, but um, it doesn't happen. Or I think we need to see more promotion and maybe more endorsements, maybe from celebrities, from sports, well, heroes. So then we could encourage also more consumption of vegetables. So that's what I would like to see, actually. I don't know, in 5 years, I hope it would happen.
So we'll wave the magic wand and make it happen. So thank you very much to our panelists for these very insightful discussions and for sharing your vision, most importantly, for the future. It's clear that while the challenges are significant and the opportunities for strengthening seed systems and research infrastructure in our fruits and vegetables are immense and offer profound returns for human and planetary health. The colorful revolution called for in the report truly begins with these foundational investments. We hope that today's discussions provide our audience with actionable insights and encourages further collaboration and commitments to these vital areas that have been raised. So thank you again to our distinguished panelists. We will open the floor. I'll hand it over to Erin to open the floor for the audience questions.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you. Excellent moderating and very insightful panel. I'm just nodding a lot in agreement. And I think you're right, Marianne, just how important it is to start investing in fruits and vegetables if we actually want to see consumer demand increase. And by increasing consumer demand, we'll really be able to drive the necessary funding for seed systems at the local level. If there's not enough demand and farmers aren't seeing that demand, then it's much more difficult. I mean, of course, it's a whole system that needs to be driven, but really, this investment is such a critical part to both the demand and the supply part of it. So now I would invite others to jump in with questions. We'll spend about another 10 minutes on questions at least, and then we can pivot to the overall study before we close out. So I would love to use the opportunity to ask one of my own questions, and I'd like to address it to Naalamle, who is very knowledgeable on African indigenous vegetables and also has done a lot of work within gender and cultural dynamics of AIVs. And so I was wondering if you can speak to, and of course others come in if you like, that when developing seed varieties or considering biodiversity within variety trials, and as it connects to nutrition, what factors are important to consider around gender and like cultural dynamics to impact variety development or selection and or vice versa? So if you can just talk to me a little bit about sort of the social science connection with this seed sector development.
Okay, thank you very much, Erin. So when it comes to varietal development, etc., I mean the role of the woman it's important, so it's very important that because they tend to be the ones that are growing these vegetables, especially with the vegetables in large quantities. They make up a significant proportion of farmers that grow the vegetables. So it's very important that they are involved in the production system and even in the selection all the way to the preferences, because they also will in turn are the people in the households that are making the food choices for their families, etc. So it's very important that they are involved, and they're involved at a very early stage as well, so that in the selection of the varieties or developing the varieties, it's critical that they are present. And also in terms of they also growing and going into the production, they also tend to straddle, the consumer versus the producers, because they are making use of the produce that comes out of that. So I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Anyone else want to come in on that question?
Yeah, maybe just a quick one. Yeah, that's very important, and yeah, at times it's not always it does not always appear like a gender trait, but actually it is when you do your market intelligence and you develop that first will influence the segments on which you can operate the preferences, and then you develop your product profile that is that indirectly or directly factor into that. We have an example like jute mallow, which is an African leafy vegetable, and within Benin, what is preferred in the north is totally, I mean, when you bring what is preferred in the south to the north, nobody will actually grow it. So that's cultural, and if you miss that and you introduce a variety that works in one region of the south to the north, then you definitely miss a big opportunity to make a change. So yeah, that's definitely, especially for crops which are highly perishable like ours, fruit and vegetable, is critical to have that factor that in, and also have a feedback loop whenever you are doing your evaluations to ensure everything is aligned. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. Really interesting. I have a question from the group. Do informal seed systems contribute significantly to policy formulation in countries like Ethiopia, for example, where only 15 to 20% of seed sources are formal? So perhaps you can talk a bit about the informal seed system. I think my impression is a lot of what you talked about today might be in the formal seed sector, but perhaps there's some insight in the informal seed sector that you'd like to share.
Can I?
Please come in.
Okay, yeah. Informal seed system, I think more and more people will talk about farmer seed system because maybe informal is, I don't know if it's pejorative or how will we say it. Yeah, I don't know specifically for the case of Ethiopia if that informal seed setup contribute to policy, but in many other countries, the policy would recognize the plurality of the seed system, which means that not all farmers or all community will be served by the formal seed sector. Mary mentioned issue with having, reaching last mile farmers. So there are communities where there is no agro dealer who is present. So should we leave those farmers out of the system? No. So in the farmer seed system is basically exchanging or materials between farmers within community, or get into the open market, get seed, which have not been officially certified. So that's what really makes the difference, the regulation from the type of the variety to the certification process. So in the pharmacy system, in some cases, there might be some peer certification applied, but not in like the regulatory certification process. And that is very common in many crops, especially in indigenous or traditional vegetables, for which there is even no improved variety. So there is no way we can prevent farmers of reusing or sharing materials when there is no even a formally or officially released variety. So my stand is, in many contexts, this will coexist. And what in some cases we do is to also strengthen the capacity of lead farmers in some communities to be able to produce quality seeds, even if it's not certified, to serve people within the community under the community-based system for some type of crop. What we believe is also when people or farmers start using those kind of seeds, which are already of certain standards, they will be more willing to graduate from that to start buying seed from agro dealers when they are available, or even to the hybrid if that's what they want, and that's offering them some added value. So, okay.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. So I will just close out with one last question. Krishna, I'm going to paraphrase your question a little bit to make it a bit broader. But if you can perhaps Marianne or Alan, Marianne, you might have a specific, actually both of your expertise would come in on this well. How do you take a seed that has been developed and hopefully from our context with sustainable development goals in mind, so like nutrition for women or low income populations, and really scale it a variety to the level regionally or globally. So Krishna is asking about scaling quickly, and I think he's asking about scaling varieties pretty quickly. And of course, in this space, we're really interested in this sort of social benefit of the variety itself. So not just necessarily productivity, but there's all these other things we want to consider that might not have a natural that might not scale as quickly as a Monsanto variety. So can you talk about the scaling process a bit and any tips to do it quickly?
Yeah, thank you. Let me take a shot on this. I think it depends on scaling varieties. They would depend on the location, on the region where it would be introduced, because most of the like I said, in the Philippines, we develop these varieties locally, so these are adapted to the farming conditions in the Philippines. So we wouldn't know how it would how it would perform in other countries. But I think there is always an opportunity to do trialings. In our experience, varieties developed for example, the squash variety developed in the Philippines thrive very well in certain countries in Africa. So, and this can always be done also through, partnership agreements, no, on how these varieties could reach the farmers in other countries.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, I just want to echo Naalame's sentiment. Just thank you so much for you all being here today. I learned a lot, and it was wonderful to reflect in real life, people who are really doing this work and can offer very valid courses of action right now where investments can go to make a big difference in seed sector development, institutional capacity to drive fruit and vegetable consumption. So just, yeah, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for all of you being here. We really appreciated it. So, yeah, thank you, Matthew. We really, really loved having you here. I'm going to talk now about the overall study results and finish up with a little bit more on responsible innovations. As I've said in the past, those of you that are joining multiple sessions, we don't want this to be repetitive for you, but we want to give people who are new to the webinar series an understanding of the overall study. So with that, I'll pivot to our overall research results. And again, just thank you so much to our panel. All right. How's the screen sharing? Good? Okay, excellent. Good. All right. Excellent. So in the last 10 minutes here, I'm going to go over the high level report results that I mentioned earlier, but I'll do a little bit more of a deep dive. So as I said, a lot of the data available globally, and Matthew also echoed, many of you echoed, is not easy to aggregate and just isn't available. especially with fruits and vegetables, or they're in very weird clumps in the FAO stat. So what we aim to do is essentially use qualitative methods in order to develop quantitative results. So we used the Delphi methodology and a Q-sort methodology. I'm happy to talk more about both of these methods offline, but essentially the Delphi method is used when you don't have a lot of hard quantitative data, but you want to understand perhaps a percentage of something that's going on. So essentially, we went into all of the different countries that our partners were operating in, and we actually had a quite significant system in order to identify the countries we wanted to more deeply understand. And we talked to experts that were working in this space, both in horticulture and in staple crops, private sector, NGOs, government, and to understand how much investment was happening in their sectors. So our high-level results across countries, about half of fruit and vegetables investments go towards highly developed export-oriented value chains, and ultimately left only about 10.9% of agriculture crop-related R&D going toward locally consumed fruit and vegetables. So something to keep in mind is that if we want 50% of our plate to be fruits and vegetables, we should hope that 50% of our investments are going into fruits and vegetables. But you can already see here that we don't have nearly that amount going in. And something that's also important to consider is that the blue bar is around 9 crops that we're investing the majority of our funds are going to about 9 crops. As Marianne said, in the Philippines, rice is the predominant crop. In each country, we're looking at macronutrients, which are really important, but often singular in nature. And then you look at the fruit and vegetable investment, which not only is it below 50%, we're looking at around 10%, but that's hundreds of crops that are not getting the type of investment we need to really see the food systems outcomes that we want. So this was a really important finding. We think that if anything, these are overestimated. So I'm happy to talk to you about why we think that the number in the investment in fruits and vegetables is overestimated offline. But at best, this is what we're looking at. And so then we asked experts, what are the challenges to investment in fruits and vegetables? If we're going to overcome this hurdle, what is it that we need to look at? And what came out most predominantly was market issues around fragmentation, price volatility, and export market instability. I think all of us have examples of farmers who invested a lot of money, perhaps in fruit or tree crops, and then the price drops. And so it's really important that we have this diversified approach. And then policy. So this has also been mentioned, a prioritization of staple crops and perception of limited return on investment. Of course, we know that fruits and vegetables are higher priced crops and you can earn more on smaller amounts of land, but it's not looked at necessarily as a good investment from an investor perspective. And I think it has a lot to do with all of the other items that are listed here in this barriers chart. So around climate change and variability, pests and diseases, we are looking at hundreds of crops that often have very similar biophysical aspects to them, but they're individual and they get impacted by different pests and diseases. And so there is a high knowledge transaction that was mentioned already around extension and really being able to tackle this democratization of knowledge that needs to happen. And then, of course, high post-harvest losses, lack of cold chain storage, and poor transport infrastructure. This is critical to address when we talk about food loss and waste. Of course, fruits and vegetables, because of their perishability, we're seeing high losses. If we could invest in post-harvest innovation or even variety development that considers post-harvest low infrastructure environments, we could really almost double our food production, particularly around fruits and vegetables, which would lower the cost of production and ultimately the cost of consumption, which is a huge barrier for most people to healthy diets. Additionally, lack of upstream investment, high risk investment, and limited access to finance, which we also talked about today, and limited extension, technical expertise, and information, and weak value chain development. So we can see across the board, we really need to be looking at specific aspects of the value chain and consumption to make investments so that fruits and vegetables are an interesting investment opportunity. So our report does a deep dive into each of these sections, both, of course, aggregated globally, but then also disaggregated by the different countries we worked in and by sector. The other interesting part of the study, yeah, here we go, is the Q-sort. So the Q-sort allows people to consider in a limited resource environment how to make tough decisions. So people say, okay, if you have more money, what would you do? But really the question is, what would you give up? What are the things that we need to prioritize in order to move on fruits and vegetables? And so these are some of the opinion groups that arose globally as a majority. So we need to strengthen technical and human capacity across the value chain and invest in skills, inputs, and infrastructure to improve productivity, resilience, and fruit and vegetable consumption. And local seed systems are key to innovation and adaptability. And this opinion was primarily held by academic and NGO stakeholders. So we were also able to look at who is expressing certain opinions. And this is a very interesting process to go through as a data collection method, because you really get to see a lot of dialogue and people fight it out a bit in terms of what is the most important and what is raised to the top. And then secondly, it's really important to strengthen research capacity and integrate horticulture into national sciences and technology agendas. We heard this over and over again today. It is critical to start to advance fruit and vegetable prioritization within national governments and national agriculture research services as well. And this was primarily held by government and private sector stakeholders. And so you can see the private sector coming in and saying, we would like to be investing more in fruits and vegetables, but we really need that backstop from the government, which was so prevalent during the Green Revolution as well. And I think, we can all learn from the Green Revolution and our colorful revolution and the aspects that are climate resilient and increase biodiversity. So, one of the really amazing parts of this study is that it was action-oriented, and the experts who engaged in this process were really excited to now start working on advocating for fruit and vegetables within national policies, establishing multi-stakeholder platforms, and incentivizing local governments and grassroots campaigns, just as you were saying, Marianne, in terms of getting others to support fruits and vegetables, et cetera. And overall, the study recommends that we need a high-level panel of experts on fruits and vegetables, and someone really focusing on increasing this as a priority in the global stage. So please check out the report. And now I'll close by just saying a little bit about Responsible Innovations, which is the entity that is now carrying forward this study. We came out of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Horticulture, and now we are aiming to make food systems outcomes more equitable through our global network of experts. So we are a dynamic global network of agriculture and food systems researchers, practitioners, and innovators. Our mission is to make equity-driven innovation in food systems the norm. And we are committed to catalyzing evidence-based, community-centered solutions that ensure innovations genuinely serve the people they're designed for. And these are some of our services. We do food systems research, innovation packages, and field trial management. We do a lot of work in responsible innovation and scaling, and helping organizations like the World Bank and CGIAR understand how to make their innovations more equitable and more impactful. We would love for you to join our expert network if you're interested. We believe that we're stronger together. And our upcoming webinars. So please, we've talked a lot about nutrition this week. next week will be a whole webinar focused on nutrition. We have another set of amazing panelists working globally in this space. And then finally, we'll close out with our last finding on enabling market access for women through policy instruments. So thank you again to our incredible panelists, to all those that contributed to this study. We had an incredible team, 200 experts that supported us. So thank you, and hope to see you soon.